What's up, everybody? I'm Jane Sawyer, and this is Jane Sawyer Makes an Abominable Snowman, who is also my butler. I asked you guys whether I should make the Bumble from Rudolph the Red Nosed Reindeer or Cousin Eddie from National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. I tabulated the votes across TikTok and Instagram, and you decided we're making the Bumble. And we're gonna make him out of this. This is the wrapping paper my family used last Christmas. We try to cut down on our use of wrapping paper, and it is recyclable in my municipality. But of course, it's always better if you can reuse something before you recycle it. So we're gonna make our Bumble out of this. And the next step will be to sketch out our plan. Oh, and one more thing. If you're interested in winning this lucky Bumble's foot, make sure you watch the video all the way through, count how many times it pops up, and leave that down in the comments. When this video gets to 100 views, I will pick someone who left the correct answer and ship this Bumblefoot to them for free from my place in Canada to anywhere in the world. To get started, I printed off a few reference images from the movie so that I could break the Bumble down into his component shapes. He's basically all torso with tiny legs and really long arms. If you're interested, I've saved all these images to a Pinterest board. I'm at Jane Sawyer Makes over there. Now you might remember this scene from the movie where Yukon Cornelius brings the Bumble into the North Pole and tells everyone that the Bumble is reformed and he just wants a job. So I thought it would be very funny to make my own little Bumble Butler, and he's gonna hold a tray that I can put Christmas cookies on. The plan is to make him really sturdy, so he's gonna stand on a wooden base and have an internal structure made of scrap lumber. So to figure out how big I'm going to build the internal structure here, I have scanned my sketch into some drafting software I have and used this known value to determine the proportion of everything else. I added in a bunch of these other dimensions just as sort of rough guidelines so that as I build everything, I have a bit of an easier time keeping everything in scale. I certainly could have done this with a ruler and a calculator, but since I have the software available to me, I took the lazy way, or the efficient way. So out in the garage, I cut the lumber I needed. I just used some very affordable 1x3 strapping for this. I also got 2 rounds out of some scraps of birch veneer plywood that I had. One will be the base and one will be the tray. So while I have access to a woodworking shop and a bunch of scrap lumber, I recognize that that is not the case for everybody. Lots of different ways you could do this. I'm just doing the way that is most affordable and accessible for me and my resources. I finished the rounds with some sanding, edge banding, and a few coats of polyacrylic. I pre-drilled, glued, and screwed my lumber together to make this internal skeleton for his legs. So this is what the final leg structure looks like. There's going to be 2 cross pieces that attach at the top here, but as I'm looking at this, I'm realizing it's probably going to be a lot easier for me to sculpt the feet before I attach the skeleton part to the base here. So let's sculpt some feet. I start making these grimy grippers with a few craft sticks. I'm finally breaking out that stash of wrapping paper here and wrapping it around to bulk out toes. I kind of crumple up the paper as I go to give it some volume, and then I secure everything down with masking tape. I then paper mache over each of these little piggies and let them dry. This brown paper you see me using is also garbage from my collection. It's packing paper that comes in some of the parcels I receive, and I save it because it's so perfect for paper mache. When my little toe cake pops are dry, I trim them down and stick them to the frame. Then I use more wrapping paper to bulk out the feet, make everything look a little more natural. Covered everything in paper mache, and then I decided to just go ahead and give him his little toe claws at this point. It was a lot easier to do it now than I think it would be if I had done it after I attached to the base. Speaking of the base, I countersunk a few screws in through the bottom of the base into the lumber inside the feet. I attached a few cross pieces and also this shelf bracket thingy that's going to help hold the weight of the tray up later. I'm confident now I have a good solid foundation for my sculpture, so now I get to use all that wrapping paper I saved from last year to beef him up a little. And now I just have to turn this skeleton on feet into a beefy boy. I bulk out his legs with wads of my old wrapping paper, securing everything down with masking tape as I go. I smooth everything down with a final layer of masking tape before coating that all in a couple layers of paper mache. So you guys have just seen me build the legs for this sculpture, but in real life, I've already started working on other parts of the build. And this is all the wrapping paper I have left. So at this point, I'm starting to get a little concerned that I'm not gonna have enough to bulk out this guy's huge torso and still be able to finish the other parts I need to make. I said not to worry, my garbage collection is extensive. So I have some other stuff that I'm gonna use just to add volume so I can save some of this. I have a few of these super bulky, it's almost like honeycomb cardboard that came with some cabinets I ordered. So I'm gonna use these to sort of fill in a lot of the volume here so I can save my wrapping paper for finer things like the arms and head and such.
You heard the lady. I started cutting ovals out of the cardboard and used them to gradually build up a belly and a little booty for him. And now that he is thick with 2 C's, we can start adding on wads of wrapping paper to smooth him out. So that's what I did. I started wadding up paper, and with the help of some tape, I started smoothing out all the bulking I had done. And I ended up with something that looked like this, which I then covered in 4 layers of paper mache. Here he is all dry and ready to go, looking kind of like a big potato on feet, but it gets more exciting from here.
Okay, so now I have to build his arms. They pose a little bit of a challenge because I want them to look as organic as a replica of a stop motion puppet can look, but they also need to structurally support the load of his tray. I got a couple ideas on how to make that work, so let's go.
So we'll start those arms with some fingers. I made the fingers much in the same way that I made his toes, but I built the fingers on a piece of wire so that later on I can bend them. I made 8 finger cake pops and covered them with paper mache. I used some blocks of wood to assemble the hands and bulk them out with wads of paper. Then I could use some pliers to bend the fingers and test fit them around the tray. I then attached fingernails, covered them in paper mache, and put my head in all of the footage of them finished at this point. I cut some arm assemblies out of that strapping lumber. There's a single screw at the elbow here. It's way too long, but that'll be important later. I attached the hands to the arm assemblies. I'm not really sure how to explain how I did this, except I used the power of chaos, determination, wire, and screws. Again, I bulked out his arms with wads of wrapping paper and tape. And here's what an arm looked like after I covered it in paper mache. Okay, now do you remember that little nubbin bracket thingy that was sticking out of his belly? I'm gonna lay him down and screw the tray onto that. Now I can attach the arms in the perfect position. You can see I had to adjust the angle a little bit, and that's why his elbow is broken. Remember earlier when I pointed out that elbow screw was too long? It's in here now. I patch up my broken elbow, cut off the extra wood, and use wads of paper to blend the shoulder into the body. Then I do it all again on the other side. I use lots of tape so those joints are extra strong, and I also covered them in about 4 layers of paper mache, so when dry everything is really rock hard. I want his tray to be sturdy and level. Nice, nice, looks good. Okay, let's check it. Yay!
All right, now that I've got the arms on, he's holding his tray, I can start work on the best part, his head. Before I move on, I'm just going to take off the tray here. That way it doesn't get all gooped up with paper mache glue.
The head form starts as a great big ball of wrapping paper. I'm going to cut this in half later to form an upper and lower jaw, so I really go nuts and cover this with about 9 layers of paper mache. I cut the ball in half and take all the paper out of the middle. None of this paper is going to waste. It actually went back into another part of the sculpture. Now you can see I have 2 parts of a head that fit together perfectly. I'm going to use a cereal box to close off the domes and paper mache over those. I attach the lower jaw to the body and then use wads of paper to bulk out the back of the neck. I really hate painting inside of mouths, so to save myself a headache later, I use this cheat code where I put colored paper inside the jaws. I sculpted some teeth out of air dry clay and put a sewing pin in the base of each. I really wanted to match the look of the Bumble's teeth in the movie, so I tried this experiment where I mixed a white crayon with some melted hot glue and dipped all the teeth in that. It was pretty finicky, but in the end, I do love the look. If you're interested in seeing more of my art experiments, you can follow me on TikTok and Instagram. That's where I share most of that fun stuff. I added some purple paint to some paper clay, rolled that into a big sausage, and then stuck that to the front of the lower jaw. The pins in the bottom of the teeth made it really easy to stab into the paper mache, and I was loving the final look at this point. And of course, I repeated the process and installed all the teeth in the upper jaw at this point also. Now, in sort of dry fitting the head, I realized that I was going to have to cut a big chunk off of the top of the head to get it to sit right. But this is one of the reasons I love paper mache. It's because it's so easy to adjust on the fly. After his surgery, his head fit so much nicer. I liked the angle of the jaw, so I secured everything down and smoothed out the back of the head with, you guessed it, wads of paper and paper mache. Okay, I really want to show you guys how I made the lips, but all my footage is garbage, so it's hard to see. You're just gonna have to trust me. Step 1, twist up some paper towel. This is gonna be the meat of your lips. Step 2, get a piece of cotton fabric, bonus points if it's in your final color you want. Soak that in glue and water mix and wring it out really well. Step 3, lay the piece of fabric down and place your paper towel snake in the middle. Step 4, fold the fabric over, catching the paper towel snake in the bottom of the fold. Stick that on your monster head, adjust size, and repeat for the bottom. His tongue is made out of a scrap of foam board, which I painted and then glued into the back of his mouth. I sculpted some eyes out of air dry clay, used my hot glue and crayon trick to make them shiny, and then used some thumbtacks for the pupils. I hot glued those eyes onto the face, and then I could get to sculpting.
The building is all built, the sculpting is all sculpted, so now I just get to finish this guy off with some paint and fur.
This fancy faux fur was by far my most expensive purchase for this project. I bought a ½ meter and I spent a whopping $24. The best and least messiest way I've found to cut this stuff is to use a super sharp X-Acto blade and then slice through the backing like some sort of crafty surgeon. I cut the fur into strips and then hot glued it onto my sculpture in rows, working from his feet to the very tippy top of his head.
That's how you build a snowman, or an abominable snowman. I'm super pumped with how he turned out. The teeth technique with the glue sticks was really annoying to do, but it turned out so good in the end. I love the faux fur. I have never finished a big sculpture in faux fur before, so that was a bit of a learning curve, but I think it looks great. And I love that I was able to use a lot of materials I already had around the house here. I used some scraps of plywood and lumber, but most of the volume of this guy is last year's Christmas gift wrap. And this little ball is all I have left. So I guess I can recycle this or save it for next year's project. Let me know in the comments what you think. And of course, if you are interested in receiving this Lucky Bumble's foot, please let me know how many times you saw this guy appear in the video in the comments down below. I'm gonna get on to the finished shots in just a second, but first I wanna plug that you can follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and Pinterest. I'm at Jane Sawyer Makes on all platforms. Don't forget you can check out my other projects and free templates at janesawyermakes.com. I would love if you would consider subscribing here. I post new videos as often as I can. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.